So we move ahead in this chapter in our chapter Peasants, Zamindars and the State. और इससे पहले हम हमारे चैप्टर का फर्स्ट टॉपिक डिस्कस कर रहे थे. वी वर टॉकिंग अबाउट द पेजेंट्स, the peasantry, the kind of resources that they had, the kind of cultivation that they did and the kind of crops that they grew. तो हम बेसिकली peasants के बारे में बात कर रहे थे. हम देख रहे थे कि जो सबसे मेजॉरिटी शेयर है पॉपुलेशन का वो कैसी है, किस तरह से रहती है, क्या काम करती है. वी डिस्कस ऑल दीज थिंग्स. तो वो हमारा फर्स्ट टॉपिक था इस चैप्टर का, जो जिसमें 4 सब टॉपिक्स थे जो हमने एक एक करके कवर किए. This here is our second topic from the chapter. We start with the second topic, the village community, and so this here is the first subtopic under village community. तो village community में भी हमारे पास काफी सारे subtopics हैं, हम एक एक करके पढ़ेंगे. We start with the first one, which is caste and the rural milieu. But anyway, before that, when we talk about the village community, हमें इससे पहले इस चैप्टर में village community के बारे में हमने जो भी पढ़ा है, हमने वो पेजेंट्स के पर्सपेक्टिव से पढ़ा है. हमने बेसिकली पेजेंट्स के लाइव्स और उनके लाइवलीहुड्स को एनालाइज किया है और हमने देखा है कि किस तरीके की दिक्कतें होती थी पेजेंट्स को, किस तरीके का लाइफ था उनका, किस तरह वो प्रोडक्शन करते थे, वो काफी पॉवर्टी में रहते थे, वो काफी लार्ज पॉपुलेशन था पर उनके पास जो रिसोर्स बेस थी वो काफी कम थी. And so these were people who were not very economically well off. और cultivation की अगर हम बात करें तो irrigation facilities के बिना completely rainfall पे depend करके कैसे cultivation करना, it was difficult for them. These are some of the things that we discussed when we were talking about peasants. So when we talk about the village community, we divide the village community into 3 groups: the cultivators, the panchayat and the village headman. So there is तो villages में क्या है, village में हमारे पास बहुत ही abundant scale में cultivation हो रही है, farming हो रही है, हर कोई farming कर रहा है, हर कोई cultivation कर रहा है. Everybody has land, or at least if everybody doesn't have land, everybody is at least involved in some or the other form of agriculture. तो हमारे पास जो पूरा village है, जो पूरा rural population है, तो वो किसी ना किसी तरह से हमें पता है एग्रीकल्चर पे डिपेंड कर रहा है. Those are our cultivators. Those are the people who are somehow or the other involved in the entire process of cultivation. तो ये हो गया हमारा सबसे बड़ा group, the biggest, the majority population. Then we had the panchayat. So the panchayat was and still is a sort of local governing body, a sort of rural body for local body for governance, जो कि village के let's say financial matters को या day to day routine चीजों को oversee करता था, regulate करता था. We'll talk about the panchayat in a little while, but and the head of this panchayat was like the village headman, and he was someone who took the most supreme position because he was the one with the maximum power, the maximum political power in that village, because he was the head of that governing body that used to oversee all the matters regarding that village. So he was the headman. So this was a man with lots of power, at least in the village. So when we start talking about the village community, हमने देखा कि ये 3 हमारे पास groups है. ऐसे ये 3 groups में हम लोगों को बांट सकते हैं. एक तो ये लोग हो गए जो cultivation में involved थे, and in this group group of cultivators were putting land owning classes and were putting peasants alike, because land owning classes भी cultivation से related थे, because it was their land that was being cultivated, even if they were not the ones cultivating it, but still it was their land, it was their resource that was being utilized in the cultivation process. And so these people come under the group of cultivators just as much as the peasants do. So in our first group we put peasants and landowning classes alike. So we have peasants under cultivators, and we have landowners also. Then we have the panchayat, which is the local governing body, and then we have the village headman. So this was our village community. अब एक चीज जो हमें ध्यान में रखनी है वो ये है कि हम रूरल इंडिया की बात कर रहे हैं और वो भी मिडिएवल पीरियड में. सो वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट समथिंग दैट वाज नॉट something that was very very far away from. We're talking about a phase in history, a time in history, and a place in the world which was very very far from modernization, right? So even though this was like a very civilized place, this was something जहाँ पे ट्रेड और कमर्शियल एक्टिविटीज बहुत अबंडेंट स्केल में होती थी, बट दिस वाज अ प्लेस दैट वाज वेरी फार फ्रॉम modern methods and modern ideologies. So in this village that we're talking about under the Mughal rule, in this village of 16th and 17th centuries, in this village of medieval history, we see that the rural life, the rural lifestyle was very intricately involved with the concepts of class and कास्ट हायरार्कीज. तो कास्ट की जो हम बात करते हैं, जिसको हम इतने विहेमेंटली इरेडिकेट करने की कोशिश करते हैं हमारे प्रेजेंट जमाने में, तो caste was something that was very important back then. It still is back now in several areas in India, in several rural areas in India. It is very important, but back then it was the most basic determining factor of the entire village community. तो ये village community कैसे इसको स्ट्रक्चर करेंगे हम, उस चीज का मतलब सबसे बेसिक डोमिनेटिंग फैक्टर था कास्ट. सो कास्ट और other forms of inequalities like caste and class based inequalities जो है हमारे पास, ये बहुत ही ज्यादा डिसाइसिव फैक्टर होते थे रूरल इकोनॉमी में. So when we talk about caste and the rural milieu, we acknowledge the fact that there are very deep caste based and other inequalities. तो अगर हम ये कहते हैं कि caste based and other inequalities, मतलब there was the existence of caste and there were existence of other forms of inequalities, there were existence of other forms of segregation. बहुत ज्यादा डिस्क्रिमिनेशन होता था लोगों के साथ कास्ट के ऊपर, बहुत ज्यादा सेग्रीगेशन होता था लोगों का, एंड दिस इज समथिंग दैट वी कैन नॉट इग्नोर व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट द रूरल पॉपुलेशन, व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट द economics of the village, when we talk about the lives of these village people. We cannot ignore the fact that caste was something that mattered to them very much, and caste was something that had a very it had a very huge effect on their lives. So there were forms of inequalities which you just cannot do away with. It's not something that you can let go of. It's not something that you can change about the rural population. It was something that existed there for quite a while now, and it was something that was just prevalent in all rural areas under the Mughal rule. So caste was an important factor, and because on the basis of caste there were several forms of discrimination happening with people in these rural areas. So that's what we start with when we talk about the rural population. The first thing that we acknowledge is the existence of caste based inequalities and discriminations on the basis of these inequalities. So after we acknowledge the fact कि caste का problem था और बहुत ही prevalent था caste को लेके जो discrimination होता है, तो after this we see there was a heterogeneous group of cultivators. Now when we talk about heterogeneous group of cultivators, what we mean is cultivators का जो ये हमने classification किया था, हमने जब कहा था कि village community में सबसे बड़ा जो group है, सबसे बड़ा जो क्लासिफिकेशन है वो ये कल्टीवेटर्स का है, और हमने ये भी देखा कि कल्टीवेटर्स में हमारे पास पेजेंट्री भी आती है, हमारे पास लैंड ओनिंग क्लासेस भी आते हैं. तो these two further classifications are like very very different amongst themselves. It's like these are the people who exist in larger numbers. These are the one who exist in fewer numbers. These are able to capture a very less proportion of the entire resource base of the village. The landowners, on the other hand, have a huge share in the entire resource base of the village. तो अगर हम पूरे विलेज कम्युनिटी के रिसोर्स बेस को डिवाइड करते हैं, हम देखेंगे कि उसका मेजॉरिटी पोर्शन जो है वो लैंड ओनिंग क्लासेस के पास है. It belongs to people who if we look at the caste hierarchy, it belongs to people who are from the upper caste or upper stratas of the society, and the lower the people from the lower strata of society have have access to a very low share of the resource base. And when we talk about resource base, we primarily refer to land. That's our primary reference. हम जब resource base की बात करते हैं तब हम basically indirectly हम land की बात करते हैं, but even other than land there are several other resources, like all the community resources that we have that are supposed to be shared by the entire village community. People were denied access to a lot of those community resources too. So that's what we were talking about. So a heterogeneous group of cultivators. And when we say heterogeneous group of cultivators, we mean ये जो cultivators का group था, it was heterogeneous. It was like it consisted of peasants also, and it consisted of landowners also. So this was a group which consisted of different types of people, which consisted of different people from different we can say people from different castes, or people who belong to different stratas in the caste hierarchy, and it was quite prevalent. It was it was heterogeneous because these groups of people cannot be mixed. You can absolutely spot the difference between people from people from different castes and people from different backgrounds. So it's not like जो cultivators का पूरा group था वो बहुत ही uniform group था. It was like no matter what family backgrounds they had, or no matter what caste or class they belong to, they just form a group of cultivators. ऐसा नहीं था. Cultivators में बहुत ही मतलब deep segregation होती थी, एक discrimination होती थी, जहाँ पे हम peasants को, जो peasantry थी और जो upper caste के लोग थे, जो land owning classes थे, इनको हम बहुत ही prominently इनको हम differentiate कर सकते थे, and that is why it is called heterogeneous. It is heterogeneous in terms of the fact that these people can be easily differentiated. The group of cultivators, the people who belong to these groups of cultivators can be easily differentiated on the basis of their social background. So that is why it was a very heterogeneous group of cultivators. And in this heterogeneous group of cultivators, we see a large number of, a sizable group of menial agricultural laborers. So बहुत इनमें agricultural laborers हुआ करती थी, जो बहुत large numbers में होते थे, and these people were referred to as Majus, or these were like people who did work hard. These were like people who tilled the land and who who basically worked much harder than people who just owned the land. These were the people who did most of the real work, but these were also the people who enjoyed very low respectability in the society. These were called menial agricultural laborers, and it's not menial in terms of the job they did, but they were referred to as menial in terms of the resource base that they had, in terms of the wealth that they had, and in terms of the respectability that they enjoyed in society. So when we say menial, we say not in terms of work done, because clearly these were the people who did most of the work, but in terms of respectability, because that's one thing that they kind of lacked in the society. And then in terms of the wealth that they had, or the resource base that they had access to. So these were the things that made them menial. And also these were people who were in large numbers. These were people who जिनका मेजॉरिटी पॉपुलेशन था, जिनको अगर हम क्वांटिफाई करने की कोशिश करेंगे तो these were the ones that existed in majority numbers. तो इनको मजूर भी कहा जाता था. And we talk a little bit about these people, about the menial agricultural laborers, or about the about people who have been referred to as the lower strata of the society. So these people existed in sizable numbers. They comprised of a large section of the population. मतलब population इनकी ज़्यादा थी, but इनको so let's move on. Right now we just acknowledge the fact that these are the people who existed in majority numbers. These were like what we refer to as the common men, as the as people who do not have too much wealth or too many resources, people who just worked hard and who made a somewhat decent living for themselves. So these were people in sizable numbers. They also had the least resources. So इनका जो resource base था ये सबसे कम था. These were the people who had the least resources, and so they often relegated to poverty. तो poverty जो थी वो इन लोगों में सबसे ज़्यादा थी. Even though ये सबसे ज़्यादा majority numbers में थे, but इनमें से ही गरीबों की संख्या सबसे ज़्यादा थी. So they often relegated to poverty, and these were people who were constrained by their position in the caste hierarchy. So these were people who could not move out of their caste hierarchies even if they wanted to. These were people who had to be forced, who were forced to do the job that suited their position in society. They couldn't do anything else because that was not permitted by their caste, and these were people who have been designated a particular position in the society in terms of their caste, but it's not like they can help it. It's not like they can do something about it. It's something that has been imposed on them. So तीन चीजें देखी हमने इन लोगों के बारे में, इन मीनियल एग्रीकल्चरल लेबरर्स जिनको बोला जाता था, इनके बारे में. पहला चीज ये है कि इनके नंबर्स सबसे ज्यादा थे. इनका सबसे these people were like the largest section of the population. तो पहला चीज ये है. दूसरा चीज ये है कि इनके पास रिसोर्सेज सबसे ज्यादा कम थी, जिसकी वजह से गरीबों की संख्या इनमें सबसे ज्यादा थी. ये लोग सबसे ज्यादा गरीबी में जीते थे क्योंकि इनके पास पैसों की बहुत कमी थी, वेल्थ की बहुत कमी थी. सो व्हेन वी से लीस्ट रिसोर्सेज, वी मीन they had we take into account two things here, two aggregates here. They have low income and they have low wealth. And wealth and income are not the same thing. It's like they have their source of earning is not very it's just not very good. It's not something that helped a lot. It's like they have a low income and they have a low wealth. Their resource base is just as low as the kind of money that they make from being involved in the cultivation process. So this is the second thing we saw about them. ये दूसरी चीज थी कि इनका resource base बहुत कम था, low income and low wealth. एंड तीसरी चीज जो हमने देखी वो ये है कि ये लोग अपने पोजीशन में बंधे हुए थे. ये लोग कास्ट हायरार्की में, अगर हम एक हायरार्किकल कास्ट पिरामिड बनाएंगे तो ये लोग सबसे नीचे आते थे. इवन दो ये लोग सबसे ज्यादा नंबर्स में है, इनका पोजीशन बहुत ही खराब था सोसाइटी में, जिसकी वजह से इनके पास रिस्पेक्टेबिलिटी भी बहुत कम अमाउंट में होती थी. एंड so these are the three things that we learn about the menial agricultural laborers. We see a few examples of people like these, people who had people who belong to the lower stratas of the society and people who had succumbed to poverty because of the kind of treatment that they got in their rural communities. the first example that we look at is in Muslim communities, menials like halal Qurans housed outside the boundaries of the village. So there was so this word basically means scavengers. तो जो ह्यूमन स्कैवेंजर्स की हम बात करते हैं आज के टाइम पे भी, तो ऐसे लोग जो थे, ऐसे मीनियल काम करने वाले जो लोग थे, वो so these were people who did very these were people who derived their source of earnings by doing very odd jobs and by doing very menial forms of work. So these were people who did very menial forms of work. और ऐसी चीजों से, like scavenging is for example a very menial form of work which happens to be people's last resort when it comes to earning a livelihood. So these people were housed outside the boundaries of the village because they were the people from low income group, and they were people who were considered very people who were considered as belonging to the lower strata of the society. तो इनको जो है विलेज के बाउंड्रीज के बाहर ही कर दिया, इनको बोला कि तुम विलेज के अंदर नहीं रह सकते, you cannot share the same living space with us, so you just have to be segregated from the society. So this was the kind of treatment that was given to people who belong to this group. Also, another thing, in Bihar we see Mallazadas, or literally speaking sons of boatmen, were comparable to slaves. तो जो भी हम देखते हैं, जहाँ पे भी, जिस स्टेट की भी हम बात करते हैं, द बेसिक आइडिया इज कि जिन लोगों का काम बहुत ज्यादा अच्छा नहीं था, जो लोग लो इनकम ग्रुप्स के थे, जो लोग बहुत ही मीनियल तरीके की काम करते थे, जो लोग जिनका कास्ट और क्लास पोजीशन बहुत ज्यादा अच्छा नहीं था, उनके साथ डिस्क्रिमिनेशन किया जाता था, उनके the conclusion behind what we have been studying so far, जो इनके साथ, इनके लाइफस्टाइल की जो कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स हमने देखी है और इनके साथ जैसा ट्रीटमेंट होते हुए हमने देखा है, the conclusion for this entire segment is there was a direct correlation between caste, poverty and social status. So caste was like caste was something that talks about your social background. Poverty talks about your economic status and the social status. तो like the point is कि जितना एक इंसान lower कास्ट से होगा, उस इंसान की इकोनॉमिक कंडीशन उतनी ही बुरी होगी. दैट वाज द आइडिया. इफ यू बिलोंग टू समवन फ्रॉम अ हायर कास्ट, इवन इफ योर इनकम इज नॉट वेरी हाई, at least your wealth is going to be very high, and so is your respectability in the society. You don't need to be a very successful person yourself, but just because you are blessed to be born in a certain family with a certain respectable social background, you get the same respectability that your parents do, or that generations of your family have been given. So that was the idea of it. जितना एक इंसान का, so a person's personal efforts or a person's individuality is not what matters here. A person's social background and a person's caste is what matters in determining the kind of lives that they live and the kind of respectability that they enjoy in the society. So there was a direct correlation between caste and poverty, and it was a positive relationship. The higher the caste, the less the higher the caste, and the more well off you are, the richer you are, the more respectable a person you can be. So that was the idea behind it, especially at the lower strata of society. तो ये जो correlation था, जो हम देखते हैं कि एक इंसान की social background या social status जितनी बुरी थी, उसका economic condition भी उतना ही बुरा था. ये जो correlation है, ये सबसे ज्यादा prominent और सबसे ज्यादा striking हम देखते हैं पूरे सोसाइटी में जो लोअर स्टेटस होती थी उन लोगों में, it was not very apparent at the intermediate levels, because if you belong to someone from the middle stratas of the society, if your social background is just good enough, it's just not too good and it's not too bad, and your economic condition is also going to be it's going to be relative. It's like your economic condition is not too highly dependent on your social status. So in intermediate levels, what we see is, if your social condition is somewhat good, it won't necessarily impact your economic condition, but and vice versa. But at lower stratas of society, we see there is a very prominent correlation. The correlation is more prominent at the lowest levels, because these were the people who were the who were just who had the worst of both the spheres, who were never economically well off and who were never socially accepted. So these were the people who were discriminated socially, and who were who had financial problems also. So that is the conclusion that we have tried to derive by after whatever we have looked at so far. So this is the conclusion. There was a direct correlation in the rural population between caste and poverty and social status, especially at the lower strata of society, and was not so marked at intermediate levels. तो ये हमने विलेज कम्युनिटी की बात की, हमने कास्ट एंड रूरल मिलियू की बात की. अब कुछ एग्जाम्पल्स देखेंगे. देयर आर सम एग्जाम्पल्स दैट आर enlisted in the book. We look at each of them, and these are like you can think of them as state-wise varying examples. So the first, in 17th century Marwar, Rajputs were mentioned as peasants. So Rajputs are like so राजपूताना जो इनका जो कम्युनिटी था, उनको पेजेंट्स की तरह ट्रीट किया जाता था, उनको पेजेंट्स डिक्लेयर किया गया था उस टाइम, बिकॉज इट वाज it was the Mughal era. So at that point of time, the Rajputs were not very powerful. They might have been powerful economically, but socially they were not a very powerful or a very dominant community of people. It was the Mughals who were the highest order, and so the Rajputs who belonged, who were from the Hindu community, have been mentioned as peasants. As the same as Jats, who had a low status in the caste hierarchy, which is kind of really obvious, because we had Mughal emperors at that point of time. It was our country was ruled by Mughal people, and so these communities have been straight away mentioned as the peasantry, and they did not enjoy a very high status in the society. So that's one example. The second is Kauravas, who cultivated land around Vrindavan, which is in UP, sought Rajput status. Communities like Ahirs, Gujars and Malis gained profitability from cattle rearing and horticulture, thus rising in the hierarchy. So this is an interesting example. It's like people made profits, people made economic profits, and that helped them achieve a high degree of respectability in the society, and it helped them rise above in the caste hierarchy. So this is an interesting example. And the last example that we have is in eastern regions, intermediate pastoral and fishing castes like the Sadgobs and Kaivartas acquired the status of peasants. So this just goes on to say कि ये हमारे पूरे कंट्री में मुगल रूल के अंडर जो भी एरियाज थे, तो मेजॉरिटी ऑफ देम वर लाइक पेजेंट्री में फॉल करते थे. मेजॉरिटी कम्युनिटीज जो थे, हम पॉपुलेशन की बात नहीं कर रहे, बट मोस्ट ऑफ द कम्युनिटीज बिलोंग टू द पेजेंट क्लास ऑफ द society, and in most communities in rural areas we see a high degree of correlation between between social status and economic condition, between how whether or not you're poor and whether or not you belong to a good caste is what mattered the most in these rural communities. So that's our first lecture about caste and the rural milieu in our study of the village community.